Hey friends, welcome back to part 2 in my series, How to Turn a Hobby into a Career. Stick around. Hi friends, welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Jen, single mom, artist, and entrepreneur. And the whole goal with this channel is to show other single parents that it is absolutely possible to build a life that you love and do it all by yourself. So this video today is part 2 in my series, How to Turn a Hobby into a Career. And today's session is all about business planning. So whenever you want to think about starting a new business, there is a lot of planning that has to go into the whole thing. I highly recommend writing a full business plan. It's a daunting experience, and you can find examples of business plans online. You can find examples of how to write a business plan online, but I highly recommend that you do it because it makes you think about all the facets of a business that you probably haven't already considered. And if you've never owned a business before, that's really important because it really makes you kind of dig deep and really consider all of the pieces and parts before you get started. Now, I'm kind of a jump in first, feet first kind of girl. It's just kind of how I'm geared. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a ton of planning that goes into everything that I do. Because in the end, planning makes all the difference. So the first piece is, what are you selling? Whether it's a product or a service, selling is just part of the deal. So what are you selling? Are you selling a craft that you make? Something that you just love to do? Are you selling something that you're really good at? Are you great at helping people problem solve and plan things? So you're selling your service? What are you selling? And I would highly recommend that you make a giant list of all the features and benefits of that thing or service and all of the cons, all of the things that people might not like about that thing or that service. Not because you're going to focus on that, but because it's important for you to know what the cons are. The next part you have to consider is, who are you going to sell to? And this really needs to be kind of focused down. I know a lot of people go into business thinking, well, I'm going to sell to everybody. Everybody is my ideal client, but that's not true. Everybody is not your ideal client, no matter what it is that you sell. There is a specific niche of people that are your ideal client. For instance, I know with my boudoir photography business, my ideal client is women 30 and up. Most of them are moms. Most of them work, so they are working moms. And they are in various stages of the child rearing phase. Some have small kids, some have half-grown kids, some have much older kids. And they are all feeling a disconnect from themselves, their body, their sexuality, their sensuality, and that's why they come to me. So I know who my client is. You need to know who your clients are, and you need to know specifically who your clients are. By the way, I also know how much money my clients make. I know their marital status. It's narrowed way down. You may have more than one group of ideal client, and that's okay. Lots of businesses have more than one group of ideal client. And you need to know who that ideal client is really narrowed down, because you're going to use that information in the next step, which is figuring out how you're going to reach that ideal client. Do they spend all their time on Facebook? Do they spend all their time on Twitter? Do they spend all of their time at the bar? Do they spend all of their time at social events like networking meetings? Do they spend all of their time at sporting events? You need to know who your ideal client is so that you can figure out where you're going to find them, because where you're going to find them is piece number 1 for how you're going to market to them. There are so many ways to market these days. Social media, in person, magazines, TV, radio, all of the big guys that used to be the main ways that people marketed are still valid for certain businesses. But without knowing who your target market is, where they spend their time, you can't know what the best way to get your message to them is. Maybe it's social media, but maybe it's not. A lot of people think that social media is the way to reach their client, and that is true for a lot of businesses, but it is not the only way. And it is definitely not the best way depending on who your ideal client is. If your ideal client is the Elon Musks of the world, do you think he's on Facebook wasting time scrolling? No, he's not. That's not how you're going to reach him. So knowing who your client is matters, because knowing who they are and where they spend their time gives you the keys on how to market to them. Now, once you've kind of got a feel for what you're going to sell, who you're going to sell it to, and how you're going to reach them, now is when I suggest you consider business structure. So there are multiple options for structuring your business: sole proprietorship, incorporation like an LLC or an S corp, or even a traditional incorporation. There are legal and tax advantages and disadvantages to each of those options. It's a really good idea to research what those options provide and what they don't provide. So, for instance, if you become an LLC, one of the advantages to that is that if your company is sued, there's a barrier between company assets and your personal assets. However, there's this thing called piercing the corporate veil. There are certain financial things that you may do that could theoretically pierce the corporate veil. Piercing the corporate veil gets rid of that legal protection of your personal assets. So, you need to understand the kinds of legal business structures that exist and how they differ and how they can be protective and how they have disadvantages. I highly recommend speaking to a CPA or a tax attorney about your specific business and what kind of structure makes the most sense for that business. Now, you can always change legal structure down the road. If you're starting a small craft business, then a sole proprietorship may be the best possible thing for you. However, if you're starting a craft-based business, but your products are for babies and toddlers, maybe you need more legal protection than a sole proprietorship can offer you because of choking hazards and things of that nature. So what you're selling definitely bears some importance on the kind of legal structure that makes the most sense for your business. Incorporation of any kind definitely has giant tax advantages over sole proprietorship. However, some of those can be hard to maneuver if you don't have the guidance of a good CPA. So, research. That's the point of this. Research. You need to do your homework and really figure out what makes the most sense for you and your business. And lastly, will your business require special licensing for your state, your county, or even federally? So I live in the United States, so I'm speaking about the United States specifically because this is the place where I'm familiar with how things work here. So, for instance, my massage therapy business, there's no federal licensing required for that. However, the state of Indiana requires that I have a massage license. So I do. So the state of Indiana requires that. In the state of Indiana, massage services are not taxed, so I do not need a tax ID number, a state tax ID number for my massage therapy business, but I do need a state tax ID number for my stained glass business because I sell tangible products which require me to collect sales tax. So in the end, my suggestion is figure out what you're selling, figure out who your audience is, figure out how you're going to sell to them, and then based on all of that information, research what the best entity is going to be for your business and find out what legal requirements there are for even starting your business. There are even county business licenses required in some states. It's not in mine, but that doesn't mean it isn't in yours. So those are all questions to ask. Here in the United States, a lot of information about business entities can be found on the Small Business Administration's website. There's a lot of information and details and directs on where to do further research. So I highly recommend checking that out. Hopefully this content was helpful for you. I hope you enjoyed it. Please feel free to like and subscribe and leave me a comment below. See you soon.